Good morning. When everybody's opening the newspapers, the logistics magazines, we are confronted with a lot of announcement of the new world, of the new emerging technologies, of blockchains that will change the world of logistics and supply chains, of artificial intelligence that will make everything better, nicer, faster, cheaper. But on the other hand, when we look in the newspaper, we see crisis in the supply chains. We see about troubles that we have, and it seems that they more increase than decrease in today's world. And this is what we want to discuss today. I have a great expert panel here discussing the question, let's do a reality check, not to say, wow, these new technologies are great, these new technologies is something that everybody needs and heals the world, but let's do a reality check based on real projects that we are doing, how new emerging technologies like blockchain and AI will reshape the world of logistics and if they are doing that at all. And this is how I want to announce my panel, and warm welcome to Bernhard Schmaldienst. He is Director of Operations, Freight Procurement and Audit at Transporion. My second guest is Matthias Leibezeder. He is Innovation Manager at the Walter Group. And last but not least, Bernhard Hauser. He is CEO of Haylog. And my name is Michael Schramm. I'm at EY Consulting. I'm leading the blockchain practice for Germany, Switzerland, and Austria. I'm accompanying a lot of companies starting with new technologies, starting with blockchains, especially in the area of logistics, and I will share some of my experience with projects as well. But let's make a short introduction round, and my question to you will maybe you can in 1-2 sentences explain where do you come from, what is your job, what is your company doing, and how especially, which kind of technologies are you using, and maybe one, and this is the most difficult part at the beginning, maybe in 1 sentence try to answer our question, how emerging technologies like blockchain, AI, and other technologies will reshape logistics. In 1 sentence now, and for the next 50 minutes, we will do it in more detail. Maybe you want to start, Bernhard.
Thank you. Hello to everyone. I'm Bernhard Schmaldienst from Transporion. Transporion is providing the entire world with the leading transportation management platform. We have around 1,400 shippers trusting our services and 145,000 carriers utilizing our services, and we connect them by our platform. I'm in charge for the freight procurement and audit division within the Transporion unit, and together with the 250 colleagues, we provide the best-in-class procurement and audit services for the logistics industry. So that's where we are, and to get to the tricky part, as of now, I don't think that we can even partially explain how far we will come with technology. If we just consider where we've been with artificial intelligence just 2 years ago and how the adoption rate is happening right now, it's happening at an incredible speed, and therefore I would say we will see the impact, and it will be bigger than we potentially even expect as of now.
Okay, thank you. Matthias.
Hello there, and welcome from my side. Thanks for inviting me, Michael. I'm Matthias Leibezeder. I'm Innovation Manager for the Walter Group. Walter Group as a name perhaps is not that sounding to anybody. It consists of LKW Walter, Containix, Veru, and many other companies that have one thing in common. They all have a touch point with logistics. So LKW Walter obviously is focused on road and intermodal transport all over Europe, and is the leading part in our innovation efforts, where we also did a lot of projects that I will dive deeper in then later on. And for me, the big hassle about new technologies in logistics is that the technology is evolving faster than the logistics industry is used to evolve in the past, and there is also a huge barrier in using those technologies together. As I call it, we need to enter in an area or in an era of co-opetition, so we need to cooperate even though we are in competition with each other on the market to make the best out of those new technologies.
Thank you. Bernhard.
Really good. Well,
Second Bernhard.
thank you and good morning. My name is Bernhard Hauser. I'm the CEO of Haylog. And at Haylog, we make messaging networks such as WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, and so on, compatible with logistics. So that means we take care of efficient communication with drivers on the road. And one of the key questions we try to answer with that really is, how can we get, to your point, technology really to a point where it's accessible across the industry? Because I think if we, developing new technologies and methodologies for innovation, sit in our office and think of how we can solve certain challenges, this is only one thing, but getting it out, getting it across the industry and to be used from different stakeholders, I think this is the core question that we try to answer.
Thank you, Bernhard. So after the first introduction, let's go a bit more a deep dive into our questions. Maybe you can just summarize your project, what you're doing, where your expertise comes from, and especially how do you use which kind of technologies in order to give additional value compared to, I would say, classical IT systems that we are using in logistics since 40, 50 years. So maybe, Bernd, you want to start with Transporion. Which kind of technologies are you using? How are you using them? And also, do you have maybe some learning, some best practice? We want to do a reality check, so please no visionary marketing quotes, but more some ideas and making us aware of lessons learned and best practices.
Yeah. Happy to share, and I would like to share an example out of the freight procurement space. So historically, and still I would say the status quo is that to get quotes from your carriers or the partners that you work with, very often this process is still very much email-based, or you send out something, but the final cheat is there are people involved who need to reach out, they compare quotes, and then they finally select a partner. So freight procurement is by far not as automated as it could be. So there is a lot of room for improvement. We at Transporion, we have a cutting edge, yeah, sorry for the marketing part on that, but I will stop immediately. AI, so artificial intelligence enabled service that allows freight forwarders and big shippers to procure their entire spot freight autonomous. That means without the involvement of an individual. And that sounds very great because we know it's very hard to get great people into that area. It's tough to find people at all. Plus, the automation could really boost the efficiency level and time to market for freight procurement. The challenge behind that, and let me share the example here, we did a big pilot with one of the biggest FMCG groups in the world and a key client of us in the United States. And they have some thousand spot quotes that they're asking for the land transport, full truckloads, on a daily basis. And what did we do? On the one hand, we let the team procure in the classical way, meaning their procurement people sent quotes to forwarders manually, and in parallel we applied with a closed carrier pool of 50 plus freight forwarders and carriers. We let our artificial intelligence enabled service do the exact same job, and we split the entire amounts 50-50 between all portions. What did we see out of those pilots? We saw that we could procure faster and, of course, without the manual intervention, with better rates for this client for the exact same scope. So we made it possible that it could happen. So the result was really great, but to get to this point, a lot of hard work was involved because initially we didn't get the results. Yeah? So the initial results out of the project were it's not working, we didn't receive enough quotes because the power in all such services comes from the network. And with the network, I mean, you need to reach out to the carriers involved, train them properly to utilize the services, no matter how hands-on and easy they look like. So the involvement of the entire team and the involved participants was so crucial to the success of this project, and it could not be underestimated. So finally, the technology is there, especially in a quite standardized market like the full truckloads. Autonomous procurement is a reality, so it's happening and it can happen, and we hope to see a bigger adoption across the industry for such services, but it's challenging to come to this point, and it requires great people to collaborate on a great scope.
Matthias, how do you use emerging technologies in your projects?
I'll take the full truckload example that is making it quite simple in a way, and is of course core business of LKW Walter itself. At LKW Walter, we drive a lot of digitalization, automatization processes and efforts that are based on AI, big data, all the fancy buzzwords. And we're working with a huge team of data scientists to get to a point where we can automate as many manual tasks as possible. What we did aside of that in the innovation team was we created a wonderful project together with Michael and his team, where we tried to digitize the freight documentation, so the CMR document on a digital platform, so that we can handle it as an eCMR at the end of the day, with blockchain as a backbone, so that we can prove its originality and its validity at the end of the day. Another project we are handling in the moment, in which we are already rolling out within LKW Walter among its drivers' fleets. We are doing a bonus system for truck drivers, so truck drivers get a bonus points for a digital interaction they make within the LKW Walter system and applications. And so for those points, they get vouchers and then can redeem those vouchers with the shops they want to and get the goods they want to for the digital interaction in order to involve the drivers more in the digital process, which is quite a hassle from our point of view.
Great, thank you.
In a nutshell.
HALOC, what is HALOC? You gave us a first glance, but how do you use technology here?
Yes. So also to pick on Bernhard's point, as the technology becomes more useful, the more interconnected it is and the more people are eventually using it. And to your point about understanding to digitalize drivers and access to drivers, I think we at HALOC really are the antidote to using emerging technologies in a way that we try to really change the perspective, look through the driver's eyes and understand what channels of communication, what technologies are already out there and to be used that we can facilitate to allow communication and exchange of information within logistics. So what we try to really solve for, and I briefly touched upon this point in my introduction, is understanding how we can make the exchange of information easier and more efficient. Because at the end of the day, if you don't know what's happening along the supply chain, it's really hard to optimize for it. So the really basic challenge that we try to solve is to get to know what the driver is really doing. And instead of trying to force new channels, new technologies upon the driver, we try to make existing technologies and existing channels compatible with logistics. So that's why we settled on channels such as WhatsApp. I mean, this thing here, we know from our private communication, right? I guess most of you are within your family group on WhatsApp and so on. So we know how to use it from our private space. So we try to take that experience, that knowledge, and apply it in a business sense. And in a broader sense, this is not only applicable to logistics, but could be applied to many other industries as well. So efficient communication really is at the heart, and we think that WhatsApp and other messaging networks are really the key to make this happen by applying the insights of bringing your own device or bringing your own service that you know from your private space, but to be applied in a business context.
Okay, this reminds me of a project that we did recently, and it was also, Walter was included, and GS1 and DB Schenker, and we did the digitalization of the CMR, the eCMR, and there are a lot of projects currently in digitalizing that, as there are new regulatories currently coming along. And there was one big thing, and for us the learning was how to provide a system to a big number of different stakeholders. Drivers are one part, and carriers, but in the process of digitalizing something like CMR, where you have the shipper and you have the carrier, the forwarder, the consignee, you have maybe the insurance company even. When you have so many different kind of users that are not necessarily power users and use the software 20 times a day, how do you reach them? How do you contact them? And some of the providers are offering apps where you have to register, where you have to install something, and many drivers do not even have a smartphone, a company-owned smartphone. They are using their private smartphone, and based on, maybe they would use their WhatsApp or they would use their channel, but they maybe would not register on behalf of the company for a new app. And therefore we decided to and this was a very key design element to say, we are just sending out magic links, so everybody has to be reachable by SMS or by email, and this is what everybody has, in order to access a web-based, mobile-optimized system. And this is how we try to include and make it easy for all the stakeholders to participate. Because maybe it's the construction guy with the yellow helmet on the construction site who just receives some pellets of concrete and has to sign some paper, and you cannot ask him, please install this app and register and remember your password and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, really, I think really bringing the technology out of the door and really into people's hands is a crucial aspect of what we're talking about here at the end of the day, because we can be as innovative as we would like, but if the technology eventually is not used in the industry, well, I mean, then it's really hard to solve for problems that the whole industry is facing. And the second point is, I think what in many aspects might be not high on the priority, but is crucial also for the adoption of technology is the user interface at the end of the day. Like, again, coming back to the point of WhatsApp, I mean, it's, from an interface perspective, so simple to use and easy to understand that piggybacking on this and then applying new technologies really, I think, also helps with the adoption of new ideas within the logistics industry.
Yeah, this easy-to-use topic is a crucial one, right? We have two big struggles in our industry. One thing, there are always many players involved, so it's difficult, plus we lack standardization, and this combination for the adoption of digital technology, it's a little bit poisonous, so it really slowed it down. By utilizing existing tools that really made it easier to get through the adoption point. And then we also need these standardization efforts, no matter where they come from. They mainly come from the private sector, I would say right now, but this is happening. And at some point we will reach this point where we will just be above some threshold, eCMR, utilization of messaging technology, where it will just be standard and it will boost. I'm personally convinced that we will still see quite soon this exponential growth in the adoption of that technology.
Absolutely. And perhaps as an insight we had on the eCMR project is that we've seen that not only the driver is a cornerstone of the process, but also the loading and unloading points. So there's third-party providers on the ramp that are doing the service for the company. They are not integrated with the company system. So if you send them a digital CMR on their mobile, they won't get it because they don't have a company address at that specific company. They don't have any connection to the interface of the company. So that's what's getting the process a little tricky. And also for me, it's sometimes we try to over-engineer digital solutions because on the eCMR, everybody wants the driver to register to know his name, driver's license number, and I don't know what details they need. If we look at the CMR today, it's just a ball and the line that looks like a snake at the end of the day, and nobody knows who the signature was done by. And we can live with that, but in the digital world, we want to have it 100% safe. We're not able to accept that it's perfect, perhaps not the perfect solution, but we have to somehow adapt the market to it, and there, perhaps a non-perfect solution helps more than the perfect solution.
We are talking a lot now about drivers and digitalization, so when we are talking about super new technologies, the digitalization is the prerequisite, and the fact that a driver has maybe a tablet or a smartphone, whatever, seems to be a prerequisite, but I often hear that this might be a problem. Not every driver, not every carrier is in the, can afford or will use the mobile phones. How do you, Matthias Tetsch, how do you tackle this kind of problem in saying, because you are communicating a lot with drivers like you do with Halog, so how do you solve this problem of not every driver in this world is enabled on one hand and maybe willing and motivated to use his private smartphone even for company purposes?
That's something I think all logistics service providers have in common. At DHL, Schenker, LKW, Volt, all the big ones have their fancy applications the driver should use. The driver is sitting there, and in most cases he has no smartphone as a business phone on the truck. He has an onboard unit, he has his TomTom or something where he can communicate with his boss, or he has a simple old burner phone, as we call them today, that has no smartness at all. And so how do we get the driver to use his private smartphone to interact with our application? Because that obviously helps the logistics service provider to automate and digitize processes in the back end and in their office, so to say. and also gives the carrier a little growth in the office that they have less manual work to do. So we came up with the bonus point system that LKW Volta is giving out bonus points to the drivers for uploading documents, setting status, doing the tasks he's required to do within the process. But obviously, LKW Volta is using subcontractors for their work, and so we cannot demand it. So the market is on the driver's side. So if they say, we don't want to use your app, you either die with your load, or you just take what the driver tells you he wants to do, and you go with the driver's needs, so to say, or his requirements. And so with the bonus system, we try to switch the angle and to enforce the driver's behavior, or to steer the driver's behavior by giving him a positive incentive instead of an immediate and constant negative feedback. Because what happens if he does not use the app today? Somebody picks up the telephone, shouts at him, why are you not using the application properly? We will deduct you from your freight rate, we will several consequences that will come for you if you don't do it properly.
Thank you for mentioning this, because we really come from this punishment methodology on the driver part. And being a driver right now, it's a crazy tough job. Let's be honest, this is a tough job, and we need to look into the quality of the service. So incentivation on where the work is actually done is crucial, and what we try as a platform on the other side is make this visible, right? Do you have visibility directly with the carrier? It's a tick box, it's a plus for you as a shipper if a company provides that service. The same goes for sustainability and other criteria on top of the standard quality and price-driven structure that we are coming from. So we really need to look into this from both sides, and I'm happy to hear driver incentivation, etc., picking up step by step, because we really try the other side to make it transparent to all the shippers and forwarders out there to see, hey, this is real-time visibility, that's driver support, whatever, that's
exactly, to get the driver to share his GPS data. I can give him points, he has a direct impact, a direct goodie that he can get for those points, and he can interact with the system. And the beauty, as I see it, we have not set it up as an LKW Volta ecosystem. We've set it up in a separate entity, which we're also trying to spin out within the next months, where we want to open an ecosystem, so a payback miles and more type of service for logistics services, for different companies interacting with the driver in a digital way, that they get the possibility to give out points to the driver, and the driver gets them in one account, so he gets more and easier access to his goodies that he can require on that topic. And that is, in my opinion, the best way to handle it. As if now Schenker creates a bonus system in DHL and LKW Volta and Transporion.
Then it's the same with 100 apps that no one is using again.
Exactly, and so we can combine those apps with one bonus system. The driver interacts with all those systems as he has done before, or as he's required to, until the market is ready for consolidation. I think that will happen some 5 to 10 years from now. But we will have many apps, and we can just lay one bonus system behind all those applications, so the user, the driver, gets the most out of it. And as you said, being a driver is really a tough job, and it's really no fun all day. Everybody's shouting at you. You're treated not as an equal human being usually. So we need to somehow switch the point of view that being a driver is worth something.
How is the feedback, really out of curiosity, because we have a similar service like you have with Haylock. How is the driver's feedback on utilizing the service?
In fact, drivers, they on their side, the thing is, first I think I maybe have to take a step back and explain that it is already used. Like dispatchers, for example, they just start using their own phones, connected, whatever, to any preferred messaging network, and start communication with drivers. So it's already happening today. But the caveat really is that those conversations only live on the phone. They cannot be handed over to colleagues. So often crucial features such as real-time translations are missing, and many more. So what we actually try to solve for is, instead of clapping on the dispatcher's wrist and saying, stop using those channels for communication with drivers, we say, just go on with it, right? So we take care that they are compatible with logistical processes. So to come back to your question, drivers, they obviously love it, right? Because we understand that at the end of the day, calling is often a tough option because there is still a language barrier. It's hard to document as well if you have a call. Specifically when it comes to exchanging documents, over phone, like how, right? But really understanding how to reach the driver in an efficient manner is so crucial for delivering goods from A to B. So drivers, they really like it, but even dispatchers like it more because now they have the safety of using a tool that is compatible with GDPR in terms of privacy. They have tools such as handing over conversations to their colleagues and so on. So we try to really make a couple of stakeholders happy along the chain. And to your earlier points, to really enable the driver. Like, I mean, if you look at if you just open the newspapers, right, and understand what's happening today, I think it's not only within logistics, just retaining good employees and retaining people you work with and making their work easier, I think is the mantra of today, right? So I think it's easier to work with a carrot than with a stick. And that I think we can deliver here with technology that really helps to make these processes easier, more efficient, but at the end of the day, enable the driver to do their work. Really.
So I want to interrupt here because we have a question from the audience, and I want to encourage everybody to use Slido. Just go to slido.com and enter the code WOF EXPO 2022. Then you can ask questions that we get presented here. So there is one question: how does a blockchain-based eCMR work in the physical world, e.g. with truck drivers and warehouse workers? So maybe I can explain how our eCMR solution works in the real world. So there is one party in the whole process, and it's not always the forwarder. It's maybe 50% the forwarders, maybe it's 50% the shipper, who is in general responsible for the CMR. This is the organization who creates the CMR, who manages and maintains it. And some of the users that are interacting with the CMR, like the carrier and or the driver and or the consignee, are already known at this state when the CMR is created. So they are adding either an SMS of a mobile phone number or an email address of those participants, and whenever the CMR is then kicked off and the transport should start, these people are notified by an SMS or an email where they can easily, with their tablet, smartphone, whatever, access exactly that document without registering, without everything. So this can be in the case of a carrier, maybe the truck driver is already known at that moment, then the truck driver can be identified by the carrier, or just the carrier is identified, and whenever the carrier has then later the possibility to identify the real driver with a mobile phone number or an email address. And in case of warehouse workers, typically at the ramps where the loads and freights then are loaded, unloaded, there are some kind of mobile phones or email addresses available that are shared between the people who are there. So this is then typically used for notifying them, for getting the magic link to access exactly this document without any hassle. So this is how our eCMR works. Matthias, you at Veru have a very similar CMR. We have created it together, exactly, but so then moved into a different kind of way how to deploy it. How is it integrated in your tools?
Exactly, so it's per email, per SMS, you can push it through the Veru system, obviously. Perhaps Veru is a real-time visibility provider that was created within the Walter Group, so it's a sister company to LKW Walter, and offers you ETA calculation, eCMR, and other topics coming up with artificial intelligence and big data based on the fleet knowledge of LKW Walter, so to say, so in a very high quality standard. And what we did there is we took our co-created eCMR solution and integrated right now in the Veru interface, and there we try to also reach the driver through SMS and email, and now we also try to connect through the telematic systems we also already have an interaction point with to get the CMR pushed to the driver in the cabin so he can open it on his onboard device or on his TomTom and sign it there. And then, of course, on the unloading or loading place, usually there is a point where they today print the CMR, and there is a person sitting that has an email address, and it has to change the process slightly, and that's where we see in the test that we're doing currently, where is the hassle? You have to explain quite a lot why we need another process than the old one that works so fine for everybody.
Okay.
What I sometimes try to use as a synonym is what happens right now. Just take the physical process. Right now we exchange a paper, and we now have to find a digital counterpart to that physical paper handover. That could be a link, could be access to a system where it's visible. So we somehow need to switch over these physical interactions and exchange it by a digital one that is then very often driven by some digital device or monitor. Yeah.
Okay, I hope this answers this question. I want to go to the next question and at the beginning in the introduction I said something like, although we have evolving technologies, more possibilities than ever, more options than ever, when I open the newspaper, I read of traffic jams in front of harbors, ships are waiting to offload for days, we need to wait for cars, for mobile phones for weeks. So there are big troubles at the moment in our supply chains. So my question is, how will technologies and new technologies help to overcome those problems, if at all? Bernhard.
So I have to maybe take a step back and say that we as a company, and respectively me, I'm rather new to the industry. So Halog as a company started out earlier this year. So which was also an interesting time to get accustomed with the logistics industry. And really, correct me if I'm wrong, but right now I think this is one of the most interesting industries to work in, of macroeconomic effects, but also, I mean, there's ongoing things happening worldwide which put a lot of stress on supply chains. And I think that that is such an interesting opportunity right now to be in the industry and to solve for such challenges. And I have the expression or the impression that specifically when talking to customers, that now specifically within Central Europe, the more and more people are waking up to the fact that technology can in fact increase the efficiency of logistical processes, and that they are now more and more looking towards moving away from paper-based processes, more towards digital solutions to increase effectiveness, to lower costs, to really not only stay competitive, but to solve for these great problems that we're facing, such as an ongoing war, pandemic, shake-ups, price shocks, and not to forget a whole cohort of people now going in rents, like baby boomers, who are not going to be replaced in that amount by the following generation. So that, I think, one aspect alone would already put so much stress on the industry, but it's four of them. So it's an interesting time to be in, and I think, again, that technology can really help to overcome those obstacles.
Yeah, I think through technology we can leverage the information we have. As today, it's nice if I, as a transport manager, know that my truck is running late, but how do I get the information to my client? How do I get it to the platforms? How do I get the information that he's stuck in a traffic jam to a visibility provider? So the interconnection of systems and the smartness of the system itself is a crucial point for me, where we can take out this hurdle run that is a daily life of a logistics service provider, where we try to inform everybody in the chain about everything in time. And now with all those challenges we are facing, it's just when you're done with the whole chain, you have to start again. But now if you're not even in the middle and 20 things happened in the meantime, so you need to digitize that process seamlessly throughout the whole chain in order to be able to interchange the data. And that's why I call a lot for cooperation, co-creation in that sector. So we can co-create systems together, as we did with the ECMR. We can then each take that system and adapt it to our needs perfectly, without then having a problem with our competition in the market. So we will compete in the market with a product, but at the end it's a simple process for a CMR, so it's not rocket science what we are building there. And that's just how I see the world. There's a lot of cooperation needed so that we get the smartness into the systems, and then obviously AI, the development of big data analytics and so on and so forth will help us to drive this intelligence even further.
Yeah. Great to hear that, because I also think technology can always only be the enabler, right? And the key really is within the ecosystem or the platform thinking. Yeah, we've been on this digitalization road or buzzword topic for some years in our industries right now. But historically, or the last years, until 3-4 years ago, there was a lot of focus on digitalizing processes within a single company or within the closest partners of this company. The recent supply chain crisis has shown us the moment it goes beyond some controllable scope, and this will happen more frequently, we face a problem, because these very focused approach doesn't help us anymore. We need platforms, we need to be more open, we need to interact more within our ecosystem, within our platform. That's what we stand for as a company, but it also opens up new levels for automation driven by new technology. It also opens up for a new level of collaboration, and a very important fact, we were lacking a lot of data points in the network very often. So we need real-time information to actively change things. If I cannot reach a driver during the ride, it's nice that I know that there was a traffic jam here or there, but if I didn't take the right action at the exact point in time, the impact will be zero. And this again comes down to the interaction of the partners. So the platform model is really the thing that is happening. It's evolving. This is happening just now, and it will bring a lot of opportunities to apply great technology.
Okay, we have a new question from the audience. What about artificial intelligence? Paperless is an idea from 2000. So I agree, paperless is an idea from maybe even before 2000. But on the other hand, some regulatories only allow us now to go paperless for some aspects. But what about artificial intelligence? So we talked a bit about blockchain, we talked a bit about social media, but what about artificial intelligence? Where do you see artificial intelligence in helping the logistic to evolve, to help solving crisis, or at least help to increase the productivity of today's companies?
Yeah, can happily start with the artificial intelligence. So also artificial intelligence, the technology itself, it's really not a new one, just what we can do and the amount of data that is shared between parties has exponentially increased over the last years. And this is where I think the power is. So the technology has been there, but we might just be on the tipping point where enough connected data is available in real time within networks of partners working together, and this enables the proper usage of the artificial intelligence. Sticking to the example that we did and the pilot that we successfully did with our client, the technology is there, but just would the network not share, would the partners not react to the automatically created quotes and offers within the network, nothing would happen again. The moment we add an email conversation or a manual break in between, it's not working anymore. And very often we came to a point 80% right, but those last 20% were missing on the road. So that's my take to that.
But Matthias, I think you use artificial intelligence for your estimated time of arrival and other kind of tools that you offer.
Exactly. So there are, of course, huge data amounts that needs to be processed in order to calculate a good ETA at the end of the day. So Transparent does it with Sixfold, with Veru does it also, and does it quite well. As at LKW Volta since 2009, we are collecting data points on our now 15,000 trailers we have that are moving around Europe. And we have a database they can work with and play with. And now we have the technology, the calculating power within the machine that can handle those amounts of data and can then therefore also learn with the system. So a self-learning system that optimizes if it does not meet the goal. So we also have a certain calculation if he is there in time, on time, before the time, after we predicted, before we predicted, and why. And then the system adjusted itself in order to get it right the next time, because based on that process, if we have the visibility, we can automate a lot of things more. And as we see that at LKW Volta, we want to give our transport managers a digital assistant at hand that takes those monkey business decisions at the end off them and gives them a proper proposal on how to act in that situation, and they can decide, okay, do it, or we change those two. And for example, transport planning is one such thing. Of course, I need to know when the truck will be where and when he will be unloaded and when he can be on the next point. So I can automate the whole transport planning process, where I now, if I have 50 trucks and 48 loads, I first need to search for 2 loads. I then need to plan this bulk of trucks. And of course, the human brain is not made for that tactical decision. So there will always be less efficiency in that system as long as a human does it.
We might also live in the right world for applying artificial intelligence. What do I mean by that? Very often, or some of you might have heard about this VUCA world topic, like our world is more volatile, it's more uncertain, it's more complex, it's more ambiguous. So historically, very often we developed a model where, based on input A, always outcome Z was done. That's not how our complex world is happening right now, and artificial intelligence, per definition, allows a way to allow this level of error and decoupling input from output a little bit and learn on the way as it evolves and develops.
And I think it's always, we will still always need a human interaction with the system. As we've seen it over the last months, which AI would have predicted the Suez Canal problems? Which AI would have predicted COVID? So there are several influence factors that will make it hard for us to not have a human interacting with the whole system, because there are too many events happening in the supply chain. We are an interconnected world, and there we need to create systems that help us to make decisions. But at the end, there has to be somebody with a huge knowledge in his area of expertise, and he then needs to take the right decision based on the models we gave him.
Bernhard, a prerequisite for artificial intelligence is a huge amount of data to learn from. Right. So isn't communication with drivers and carriers, and let's not talk now about privacy things, this is also an important topic, but from a general potential, isn't that a big potential for artificial intelligence to learn something out of these conversations? Do you have some ideas in that direction?
Spot on, exactly. So I think when we look at the broader industry, what really try to solve for is the challenge of predictions to some extent, as to understand how can we know in advance if something goes wrong, or at least have a certain understanding of the probability of things going wrong. And as of today, what is currently totally left out is the information that lies within conversations. So to your point, of course, from a privacy perspective, this can and is solved, but we can, on a large data set of conversational information, we can extract, or are working on extracting information out of the context of delivering goods from A to B. And taking that information and enriching it, for example, with telematics information, or with information from TMSs, this can give so much more context and understand what routes are going well, what conversation or what stakeholders are hard to work with, where is usually a high probability of problems occurring. So to your point, absolutely, I think this is something that is, as of today, totally left out of the bigger picture, to not only take data, hard data from existing systems to make use of them, but also take conversational information and enrich those data sets.
Okay. So I would like to come back to blockchain, because we have a question from the audience, how several existing blockchain platforms can cooperate to create real logistic independent environment for usage of new technologies, but keeping data secured, yeah? So this is a big point that I'm addressing every day.
That's the DAO example.
That's so it reminds me of a saying, there is this sentence, if everybody dances on his own party, nobody has fun. Yeah? So this is a dilemma that we are seeing at the moment in the area of blockchains, that companies tend to create their own blockchain because they are seeing, wow, I will be the next big thing, the next big platform. And the idea of blockchain is not necessarily that everybody is creating his own blockchain, which is possible. It's like everybody's creating his own platform, marketplace for whatever. So the idea of blockchain is a decentralized system where kind of autonomous organizations are working on it, and which can be available for a large amount of companies. So this is what theoretically would make sense, and this is not what I personally observe on the market right now, because everybody wants to keep it on his own. And this is like open source was maybe 20 years ago, nobody understood it, that it makes sense. 20 years later, we see how many business models are working based on open source, although the base thing is for free. Nobody could believe that 20, 30 years ago, but now it's a fact. And this is, I think, where blockchain is very, at the beginning, it's very immature in this kind of adoption. And this is where I expect that projects and platforms who are too closed in a very closed environment will not have a large future. And I have to say, there are also many projects that are not significantly using blockchain as the core thing. They are using blockchain as an additional security layer, which is good and bad on both sides. Bad from an academic point of view, because you can argue, you can do it without blockchain as well. This is a discussion I always have. But second is, but exactly this kind of approach also allows it to be a bit loosely coupled of blockchain, existing blockchain, which makes it easier for other application systems to cooperate and to integrate in that exactly blockchain system. So it's not really a satisfying answer maybe to this question, but I think it's illustrating how I see. Matthias, you also have some blockchain projects in your company.
Yes,
do you have a comment on that?
I think, that question for me points a little bit in the distributed autonomous networks, which is a nice idea on paper. In my opinion, it will take us some time to get blockchain to a level where it then decides on its own how to use itself, so to say. There perhaps also a little danger in that, which might be. But obviously, my biggest call to reason or my biggest request is always, please take a look on the problem you want to solve first, and who's the one who needs to interact with the system, and then search for the technology. Yes, we've experienced it in many, many projects. There is one board member, there is one decision maker that hears the word blockchain quite a lot, then pushes for the topic. The technology should not be the solution to a problem you have to invent. You need to come from a problem, understand the problem, and then you search for the technology in order to implement a good solution for the problem. And if it's blockchain or not, nobody cares at the end of the day. When you sell it, it's the price that pays.
The next question, I love the next question, because this is my daily pain in my job. Yeah? How do you feel? Are logistics companies open to move together in these developments, or try to develop alone and create competition advantage from that? Yeah? And let me, before I ask you the question, let me open up this question with a second aspect. Especially when we are talking about blockchains, for example, but not necessarily with blockchains. Blockchains do not make sense for a single company. This is not a technology where one company says, okay, I'm now using blockchain, and now something gets better, now something improves. So blockchain is something which digitalizes an ecosystem of many, many participants, and logistics is the example of a sector that is extremely dependent on partners, suppliers, customers, working together with many, many stakeholders, with many, many different interests. So this is a good question in sense of, or I want to add, do you see companies trying to do it alone, or if they are saying, no, we need to do it for the whole ecosystem, how do you start that? Because I'm often approached with companies, single large companies who says, we see the benefit of that, we want to do that, this sounds great, here is the budget, we have money, we want to invest, we want to do something, this is our pain, but we cannot start alone. How do we address this problem that we have to include so many, we have to either force our suppliers or motivate or incentivize them? And if we are doing that as a single company, how about competition? Shouldn't we include competition, or should we see this as an extra, which is also addressed in these questions? How do you think, Bernhard, how do you think this should be addressed, or how do you see it in the market that it is addressed?
It's a great topic, and we are far from being at a very strong status here. But what I do see in the market is we see more and more initiatives focusing on doing this collaboration. Just take the Open Logistics Foundation, for example, where a lot of the biggest freight forwarders in the world are in together driving standardization. So this is happening, and people invest in those topics. Another topic is on the sustainability area. How do we track our footprints, carbon, etc., in a standardized way? Because it doesn't make sense to compare. And this is also a topic. Companies start to understand that there are certain areas where we benefit, even in the competition, more if we create a certain standard, like how do we track our emissions, and then we compete within this certain framework. And this is getting way better, but there is tons of improvements. So we are not there, but at least it's recognized and it has the potential to really move fast for more collaboration.
I really try to push that topic with anybody I speak to. So I want people to co-develop, to cooperate, to develop things together, because it does not make any sense for me if we now create 1,000 ECMR platforms, like we have it with the telematic systems, and then everybody has to connect to 1,000 different platforms in order to get the use out of that. So if we at least create, in the first step, systems that can interchange data with each other, so with proper APIs, so that we don't create closed systems at least. And then I see a trend towards open cooperation, and we did it in the ECMR example. We had DB Schenker and LKW Walter at the table. Of course, everybody now is using the product that we produce together in a single way, in a certain way, but we also learn from DB Schenker quite a lot about how they handle full truckloads. We give information on how we see the handling of full truckloads the most efficient, but we have not been talking about prices. On the market, we are still in competition, and that has to stay in that way, because that's our core market. That's where the money for those projects comes from, so we need to be in competition there. But we need to cooperate in projects in order to create a solution, and we all can get a profit out of that. If we lay our eggs in one basket, everybody has more at the end. So we were 4 parties investing in the product, and so we got an MVP that none of us alone would have been able to produce at the end of the day. And so we all have a benefit of cooperating and opening up a little and sharing information.
We actually made quite an interesting observation. I mean, if you look at the numbers, specifically in the German-speaking area of Europe, you have the fact that there is 96% of the companies are consisting, within the logistics sector, are consisting of small and mid-sized companies. So by definition, it's a very fragmented industry. But at the same time, I have the feeling that lots of people really know what's going on left and right within the industry, like who is doing what technologies are emerging, what's coming to market that's really solving a problem. And I think at the end of the day, the technology adoption does really increase if it passes the user test, if there is an actual problem to be solved, and it really can be seen either by less time spent on certain things, as in which translates into money saved, or, I mean, at the end of the day, it comes to money saved in most cases. Then you can really build a case. And I think, of course, each and every company tries to, in my opinion, create a competitive advantage to some extent, but also tries to follow what's happening within the industry. Again, despite being very fragmented, but still, people know what's going on left and right. So I think that helps the broader industry to really adopt new technologies at the end of the day.
Okay, so last question. We have 3 minutes to go. We talked now a bit more in detail about blockchain, about artificial intelligence, about social media communications, but there are many other technologies that are typically mentioned when we think about new technologies which are relevant for logistics, like autonomous driving, robotics, 3D printing, drones, things like that. So thinking of all these kind of technologies, what would be your personal guess when we are sitting here in maybe 5 to 10 years at WOF EXPO 2032, and we will be discussing about the last 10 years which emerging technologies reshaped logistics. What is your guess? What will be the technology we will be talking the most, Bernhard?
I think really there's two technologies that I think will become very relevant. I think the electrification of transports will be one major one, either it be hydrogen or electric, as in batteries. I think there is no consensus yet what technology will persist, but probably at WOF EXPO 2032 we'll probably have a better understanding by then. And I think that goes hand in hand with, not with fully autonomous driving, but I think a large chunk of the route from A to B will be partly autonomous. And what I could see already in terms of technology being applied today is that one driver not only drives one truck, but is managing several trucks who are partly autonomously driving. So I think that's probably one of the technologies that we can expect to see sometime soon.
Matthias?
Yeah, I think the biggest impact, at least on LKW Walter's core business, will obviously be autonomous driving. So if we have autonomous driving, the business case has to be redone, or the business strategy, because nowadays we try to get small and mid-sized carriers accumulate them, and then sell the volume to IKEA, Coca-Cola, and so on and so forth in the market. So that's our position at the end, and optimizing that process in between. So we're basically a old school platform, as some startups say. But there are some startups that are really puzzling me, which is Fernride and Einride in Sweden and in Munich. They try to auto-steer, so like in a computer game, the driver is sitting in an office and steering the truck or on a yard or on a highway, and he just has to interfere with the system if it alerts him that they are running in trouble. So autonomous driving will then lead us to a moment where perhaps the big OEMs, like Volvo is already saying that on panel discussions, they will not sell autonomous trucks. So they want to be the freight forwarder. So what will we as a freight forwarder then do if we don't get any trucks anymore?
Okay. Bernhard, what's your guess?
Yeah, for transportation, agree on the autonomous one, but for the warehouses, which we shouldn't leave out of scope, I would bet on robotics. And from a market perspective, this also summarizes a little bit what you said. I think it will be the player who will find the best combination in utilizing all those services, because I'm still convinced there is no winner-takes-it-all industry in B2B like we see it in the B2C area. So there will be some competing ecosystems who will manage to utilize and best organize these services in the best possible way. And this could be the winners on the technology game.
Yeah,
Agreed.
I think this was a perfect last sentence. So there is no winner-takes-it-all. We see the collaboration aspect as the key future thing, and there will be many technologies. Thank you very much for the panel. If you have some more questions, please feel free to contact us after this panel, and thank you very much for attending. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.